What's good, y'all? It's the White Shadow Norway back again with the first horror themed video in a long time. Figured I'd do one now since it's October and Halloween month, and I'm gonna do it a podcast style this time, so no video really, just me talking about horror related stuff. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna count down my favorite horror movies by year from 1970 to 1990 in this video. So I've done top 5 and top 10 lists for each year, depending on how many great horror movies I think it was that particular year. This is just my opinion, so it's not the be-all and end-all, short, of course, of the best horror movies. It's simply my opinions. I find it real relaxing to listen to horror-themed podcasts, being that I'm a horror movie fanatic and stuff, so I figured I'd make one, so here we go, right into it. My top 5 for 1970. Number 5 is Hatchet for the Honeymoon from Italy, directed by Mario Bava. So that's my number 5. It's not a great movie by any chance, but I couldn't really find that many good movies in 1970, so this made it to the top 5 anyway. At number 5, Hatchet for the Honeymoon. My number 4, we are going with Hammer films and one of the Christopher Lee Hammer Dracula movies at number 4. Scars of Dracula. Not my favorite Dracula movie either, but it's a nice one. Moving on to number 3 is also a Hammer horror Christopher Lee Dracula movie called Taste the Blood of Dracula. Number 2, Mark of the Devil, which is about the Inquisition and witchcraft and what they did to all those poor women back in the days. And entertaining and gruesome movie, that one. Definitely a classic, Mark of the Devil. And my number 1 for 1970 is Dario Argento directed The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. This set off the giallo craze from Italy. Not really the first giallo, but this is the one that set it off big time in Italy and worldwide, and it's a great murder mystery with horror elements in it, and Ennio Morricone on the score, and Dario Argento's first masterpiece flick, I would say. So my number 1 for 1970 would be The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Moving straight on to 1971, top 5 there too. It's a giallo called Short Night of the Glass Dolls, directed by Aldo Lado. That's my number 5 right there. It's a solid giallo. Number 4 is Let's Scare Jessica to Death, a real creepy horror movie, that one. Definitely grab it and watch it if you want a creepy good time. Number 3 is the vampire classic Twins of Evil, also a really good one. And number 2, the anthology from Amicus called The House That Dripped Blood, starring Peter Cushing, and real classic horror there, and creepy as fuck, really, that one. On to number 1 from 1971 is also an Italian movie by maestro Italian director Mario Bava called Bay of Blood. This is said to be the inspiration for the Friday the 13th movies and perhaps the first slasher movie. One of them anyway there, from Italy. My number 1 for 1971 is Bay of Blood. Moving on to 1972. My number 1 for 71 was Italian. My number 5 for 72 is also Italian. Loads of great horror movies and giallos and mystery movies from Italy, of course, in the 70s. So this one at number 5, directed by maestro Lucio Fulci, the master of gore right there from Italian gore right there from Italy. It's Don't Torture a Duckling, which is also a great murder mystery movie. Not one of my favorite Fulcis by far, but good enough to make it a top 5 for 1972. Keep it in Italy for number 4, and back to Mario Bava for Baron Blood. That's my number 4 for 72. Back to the UK for number 3 here with the anthology movie Asylum, which is set in an asylum and is pretty damn crazy. Number 2, keep it in the UK also with Tower of Evil. This is like a classic we used to rent on VHS back in the days, where these kids go to an island and real foggy around there, real creepy, and there's a tower there. And is there evil in the tower? Yeah, probably, hence the title Tower of Evil. A good one, a great one. My favorite, however, in 1972 brings it back to the United States for Wes Craven's first well-known horror masterpiece, The Last House on the Left, with of course David Hess as the ultimate lunatic and leader of the pack of lunatics in that one. Not for the faint-hearted, that one. You'll know what I mean. You know, it's the kind of movie you feel like taking a shower after you've seen. It's real nasty in places, and yeah, real bloody and violent and stuff like that. Number 1 in 1972, The Last House on the Left. Moving on to 1973, top 5 there also. The number 5 is And Now the Screaming Starts. I own this as a book as well, called Fengriffen, which has like a creepy drawing on the front there with this spooky character rising up from the grave. So that was, you know, a really scary one, a real scary read back in the days there. And they made a movie called And Now the Screaming Starts. I think the book is probably a little creepier. The movie gets a little bit silly at times, but it's a good scare from the UK, that one. My number 4 for 1973 is The Creeping Flesh, which is another horror movie from the UK. Moving to Italy again for the top 3 of 1973. Number 3 is Sergio Martino's Giallo Torso. Pretty basic Giallo and one of the best of its genre there from Italy. Number 2 for 1973, a bona fide creepy ghost flick called The Legend of Hell House. If ghost movies is a thing, definitely seek that one out. And of course, I can't get around the number 1 in 1973 being the infamous The Exorcist. This caused people to faint and even die in the movie theaters, just scared the shit out of the whole planet. A family member of mine, I'll keep it quiet who, just in case, you know, she doesn't want me to talk about her in, you know, all over worldwide, but she got really creeped out from this one, and there was people from the Salvation Army stopping her on the way into the movie theater to watch the premiere, and told her that they grabbed her and told her that you should definitely not watch this movie, you're not going to be able to take it. So she was like totally creeped out before she entered the theater, and it scared the shit out of her, and she never saw it again later. And she had an experience when the movie was playing, like this was in Oslo, in the capital of Norway, or in Bergen, I don't remember, one of the bigger cities anyway in Norway. And at home, when it showed at the local theater, she had a little experience about a pack of cigarettes and a lighter that started moving on a table and stuff like that. So she had to call a neighbor friend because she was really scared and was just cornered by the experience and everything. So when the Exorcist movie showed in the theater locally, so that's a little story surrounding the Exorcist there. It scared the shit out of a whole lot of people. I think you can see crowd reactions on YouTube as well, and of course, you know, everyone knows The Exorcist. Poor little Reagan, you know, played by Linda Blair, gets possessed by the devil after messing around with a Ouija board, or actually a demon called Pazuzu, and it's on some horror shit there. One of the greatest of all time. My number 1 for 1973, The Exorcist. Moving on up to 1974 there, back to Italy we go, or possibly Spain. I think it's actually a Spanish movie directed by Jorge Grau. Sorry if I got that name wrong. But anyway, Living Dead at the Manchester Morgue, aka Let the Sleeping Corpses Lie. There's some pollution in the air, and it turns people into flesh-eating zombies. Number 4, back to the UK, and a really creepy one. There's some super creepy characters in this one. Should scare the living bejesus out of you. It's a movie called Frightmare. And number 3, keeping it in the UK also, with the werewolf whodunit mystery, The Beast Must Die. Both a great horror movie, like on some classic monster werewolf type shit, and a whodunit murder mystery as well. So that's my number 3 for 1974, Beast Must Die. Number 2 is the infamous Black Christmas, also said to be one of the first slasher type movies, set at Christmas time, of course. And there's this crazy maniac who murders students in this sorority house, starring Margot Kidder as the cursing, drinking way too much broad in this movie, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun and really scary as well. Fellatio is a new exchange, that's all I can say. Black Christmas, my number 2 for 1974. Probably the best pick for a horror movie, Christmas themed horror movie. I gotta watch this before Christmas or around Christmas time every year. Anyway, I've done it for years. So that's a bit of tradition there for Black Christmas. Awesome movie there, directed by Bob Clark, R.I.P. My number 2 for 1974, Black Christmas. And of course, like 73 had the epic The Exorcist, 74 had its epic classic as well, which is my number 1 as well, and that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, directed by Tobe Hooper and financed by the Mafia, the Mob actually. Infamous for its title mostly. It's not nearly as violent as it sounds like with, Chainsaw Massacre. It's just a great classic, man, about these kids in a cabin out in the middle of West Bubblefuck, and of course there is some chainsaw swinging maniacs out there. If you have never seen it, I recommend highly that you grab it right away and watch it now. You shouldn't even be listening to me, you should be watching the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, my number 1 for 1974. In 1975, I also have a top 5. Number 5 is Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. It's a bit of a Nazi exploitation movie, that one. Quite gory and violent from the Nazi camps and stuff like that. But done in, I wouldn't say a funny way, but kind of a sexy way and a crazy way there. Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS. If you can take a lot of stuff, also watch my number 4, Salo, the 120 Days of Sodom. That's Nazi themed as well, during World War II in Italy, during Mussolini's Italy, and there's just a whole lot of crazy shit going on, and yeah, man, not for the faint-hearted either. You gotta be able to take some shit to watch that one, but a great movie in its genre and style there, Salo, my number 4. Number 3 of 1975 for me is the Ernst Borgnine, starring as the evil one, the devil himself, in The Devil's Reign. This was actually the first hardcore horror movie I saw after my mom won a VCR back in like 82 it was. And this was the first movie we rented, and one of the few horror movies they had that early on in Norway on VCR video. We had Video 2000, you had Betamax and Video 2000 and VHS back then as the different video systems. And this was the first one I rented, and it delivered the goods. I mean, it's also keeping it real as far as its title, The Devil's Reign, being having an occult satanic theme to it, because parts of it were filmed at the real Church of Satan in San Francisco, and Anton LaVey, who was the leader and the priest of the Church of Satan, he stars in the movie as well. So pretty damn real, of course, overdone a little bit compared to what it was like in reality. But The Devil's Reign, anyway, a great satanic themed horror movie. That one, my number 3 of 1975, and my first taste of a real creepy horror movie there. The first one I saw was a Super 8mm version of The Creature Walks Among Us. That's like the third creature from the Black Lagoon movie. That scared the shit out of me when I was like 5 years old, but that's a different story anyway. My number 2 for 1975 is also taking it back to Italy with Dario Argento's masterpiece Deep Red, another great horror slash giallo slash whodunit mystery movie. Arguably Dario Argento's best, of course. Dario Argento being the number 1 Italian horror director and one of the best horror directors of all time, really. So what's good enough to beat Deep Red, being that it's so great for 1975? Well, my 1975 number 1 happens to be the classic shark movie Jaws, directed by Steven Spielberg. A movie that almost never got finished because they had such problems with the mechanical shark, and they filmed it at sea as opposed to in a pool where they filmed Jaws 2. So it was a nightmare filming at sea, and the mechanical shark almost never worked, hence the documentary they made called the shark is still working or the shark is not working or something like that. But anyway, my favorite movie, I can watch this thousands of times, man. It never goes out of style and it's always entertaining. So that would be Steven Spielberg's Jaws as number 1 for 1975. Keep it moving to 1976. Number 5 is Island of Death, also known as Island of Perversion, from Greece anyway. And a real nasty, video nasty type movie. It was a video nasty as well, and deservedly so. Island of Death. So, only if you can take a lot of violence and just wild shit and watch that one. It's not for the average horror movie loving cats who enjoy everything from the Scream movies to like the original Universal monsters. I mean, you gotta be able to take shit that's a little more harsh with movies like that. So my number 5, Island of Death. Keeping it gory and violent as fuck for number 4 with blood-sucking freaks. It's I don't know, I guess you could call it like an early torture porn type movie, way before there was such a thing there. Also a lot of crazy shit going on in that movie. It's like the Grand Guignol in a modern style for the 70s. My number 3 for 1976 is the Italian masterpiece, The House of the Laughing Windows. Just a creepy, ghost, weird story there from this house that's painted with windows that are painted around so it looks like the windows laugh. It's really, really creepy one, that one. And another masterpiece from Italy. At number 2, the Brian De Palma movie called Carrie. Of course, based on the book by Stephen King. Crazy Carrie, but she had special powers. And she got, a lot of good chances to use them in the movie against the kids who were really mean to her. So, watch Carrie. It's definitely another masterpiece. My number 1, however, for 1976 is Richard Donner's The Omen, about Damien the Devil's Child, of course. Also one of the absolute best horror movies of all time. Mrs. Baylock is hella creepy to this day, man. I don't really dare watch it alone in the dark at night with the volume up full much, man, because of her. She, have no fear, little one. I'm here to protect thee. Oh, man. Anyway, the best horror movie to me from 1976, The Omen. 1977, top 5 there also. Number 5, George A. Romero's Martin. A very different vampire movie, but a really great one. Number 4 is another Lucio Fulci directed movie. So back to Italy for The Psychic, which is loosely based on Edgar Allan Poe. It's another great one. Good soundtrack as well that I've sampled on a joint at some point. Yeah, definitely a good one from Lucio, but not one of his more gory ones. So this one is kind of safe to watch, even if you're not into blood and guts and stuff like that. Top 3, number 3 is the underrated Audrey Rose. It's I wouldn't really call it a ghost movie. It's about this young girl with special powers, and it's brilliantly acted by the kid in the lead part, whose name escapes me right now, but she definitely did a fantastic job, and this is really, really slept on and underrated. I thought it was just okay the first couple of times I watched it too, but on repeated viewings, I like it more and more, and the book was really creepy as well there. Audrey Rose at number 3. Number 2 is the classic The Car, starring James Brolin, about this killer car with no driver who happens to have fun just running over people and stuff like that. Used to have this on Super 8mm, I still do somewhere, and we used to watch it on a fridge back in the days, just me and friends watching it. And yeah, a lot of fun with this car driving around and, killing people. My number 1 for 1977, also from master director Dario Argento, so that's his second number 1, and he also had Deep Red at number 2, so far on my favorites year by year horror movies, and it's the classic masterpiece Suspiria. This is a lot more about style and substance than, your regular type of movies where the acting is great and the storyline makes perfect sense, and It only halfway does in this one. It's essentially about witches and this girls' school, run by witches. And it starts off really hardcore, gory, and violent and gruesome, and then it kind of slows down from there. But as far as style and colors and stuff, it's a masterpiece too. So, number 1 for 1977 to me is Suspiria, directed by Dario Argento. Moving towards the 80s, almost there, 1978 and 79 first though, so this is my top 5 for 1978. Number 5 is Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was actually a remake starring Donald Sutherland. Kind of a really slow burn, but if you're in the mood for that, this is one of the best you can watch that are, kind of really slow and, just a little something happens every now and then, and it's real creepy as well. Invasion of the Body Snatchers at number 5. Number 4 is the Brian De Palma movie The Fury. Not one of his most well-known movies, but definitely one that's really original as well that you should check out if you haven't seen it. Number 3 is, to me, Jaws 2 for 1978. Not as great as the first Jaws, but a lot of fun. And this time they filmed it in a big swimming pool, so they didn't have all the problems that they encountered while filming the first Jaws. Number 2, we are going into some really huge classics now. My number 2 for 1978 is George A. Romero's zombie epic Dawn of the Dead. Probably, I would say definitely the best zombie movie of all time. Just, everyone's seen this one, but and even the remake is good too, but you gotta get the original, man. It's a lot of fun. It's gory as fuck, it's horror, it's comedy, it's more like a futuristic doomsday type movie as well there. Dawn of the Dead, Tom Savini. On the effects, of course, Dario Argento involved in this one as well, along with George A. Romero. So definitely watch Dawn of the Dead again if you've seen it, and if you haven't, grab it now. So what could be better than that, better than Dawn of the Dead? Are you kidding me? Anything? Well, for 1978, to me, that has to be one of my very favorites as well. My number 1 for 1978 is John Carpenter's Halloween. It's crazy to think about that they had a budget of roughly $300,000 and they made millions upon millions and made this like a big horror franchise all over the world, They were in luck because only a really obscure, unknown movie from like the 1910s or something was called Halloween before that, so they picked up that whole idea about Halloween night, which is horror themed anyway, with the trick-or-treat candies and everybody dressing up in horror costumes, and really a celebration for the dead, but John Carpenter and co, they spun it into a bona fide horror classic with the great creepy soundtrack, and of course Michael Myers, the maniac killer who could really be lurking around any corner in the dark in any neighborhood. Perhaps he's standing right outside your window looking in at you right now, or perhaps looking at me. Anyway, my number 1 for 1978, the original John Carpenter, Halloween. 1979, here we go. Italy again, and also Lucio Fulci. Zombie epic called Zombie. This was kind of a Dawn of the Dead ripoff, but way different, and it was the first Italian horror movie I ever saw. Can't forget, the shark versus zombie fight underwater. It sounds pretty crazy, but yeah, this is a good one, man. Mostly happening in the jungle for Lucio Fulci's Zombie, and he was getting into shape with his gore scenes and stuff in this one. My number 4 is Nosferatu the Vampire, not the original from 1922. That would definitely be my favorite from 1922. That's the best version as well, but this Werner Herzog German version is also great, from 1979, starring Klaus Kinski as Nosferatu the Vampire, or the Vampire. Number 3 is the ghost epic The Amityville Horror, also starring Margot Kidder and James Brolin, and the creepiest part is of course the "Get out!" crazy one, and a great soundtrack as well. It was sampled by Nas as an intro for one of his albums. I don't remember which one, but anyway, great ghost movie, the Amityville horror classic, said to be based on a true story. I would say that would be very loosely based on a true story, but anyway, the Amityville horror, number 3. Moving on to number 2 with Phantasm, one of the more original horror classics. Of course, you got the tall man with the boy and all that stuff, and the silver spheres, and yeah, man, a lot of fun. Phantasm still, man, you know, holds up well today and for repeated viewings too. Great one, great soundtrack too, sampled by Mobb Deep back in the day, Phantasm. So my number 1 for 1979 is the sci-fi horror movie Alien. We've all seen the chest blaster scene, and yeah, I've seen it a lot of times, man. It's definitely the ultimate outer space monster horror flick. So my number 1 for 1979, Alien. Into the 80s we go. Starting off, this could arguably be the best decade ever for horror movies. So starting with a top 10 for 1980 here. With Mario at the Party. He's actually from Canada, but he sounds Italian, and he's the director of the movie called Deadline, about this author that goes this of horror novels that goes gradually more and more crazy and takes it out on his family. Really slept on and was forgotten for a long time, but now somebody, I think it was Scream Factory or 88 Films or somebody, or perhaps even Arrow now, I think it was Scream Factory that released it on Blu-ray this year, so that's one to pick up now that it's finally available on something other than VHS, because it was never released on DVD actually. So Mario at the Party directed Deadline is my number 10 for 1980, and it's a great one. Another great one at number 9 is Fade to Black, about this maniac who's taken his love for movies a bit too far, as he, you know, dresses up like movie characters and kills people. Fade to Black at number 9, also pretty slept on, that one. Number 8, starring the Scream Queen of all Scream Queens, I'm talking about Jamie Lee Curtis and Terror Train. Yeah, it's another maniac loose killing people on a train, so hence the title Terror Train, with some surprises in the mix there, kind of a whodunit type flick as well. My number 7, another Lucio Fulci flick, and by this time he started to go all the way with his gore scenes. Johnny Morgan, Giovanni Lombardo Radice, great Italian horror actor and a great guy as well. He gets his brain drilled and other nasty things in this zombie flick called City of the Living Dead, directed by Lucio Fulci. My number 6 stays in Italy as well, with the Ruggero Deodato directed House on the Edge of the Park. That has both David Hess and Johnny Morgan at their craziest ever, and it's home invasion time when, you know, they're set out to have fun for the weekend. That's what they do, home invasion of the violent, nasty, perverted kind. So if that's your bag, go check House on the Edge of the Park. Top 5 for 1980. Number 5 is a classic creepy ghost movie, The Changeling, starring George C. Scott. This is like a mainstream movie, and it's a really creepy ghost flick, The Changeling. Number 4, one of the greatest, perhaps the greatest slasher franchise, Friday the 13th, and this is the first one. It came out in 1980. Friday the 13th is my number 4 for 1980, and this was, of course, before Jason. Top 3, number 3, John Carpenter's excellent The Fog. It's a ghost movie about this town that's cursed, and when the glowing fog comes moving in, the ghosts come to take revenge over the whole city over some stuff from back in the day. I'm not going to spoil it by saying any more in case you haven't seen it, but there's a fog bank out there. Number 2, movie to Italy, and one of the most controversial films ever. Probably also, now I would say definitely the first found footage film, and the one that sparked the whole video nasty hysteria in the UK and across Europe, making the authorities ban a lot of these great horror movies was this one, because it had real animal killings, and who really knew what was real or not. The director Ruggero Deodato, he was forced to he was forced to go to trial, because in Italy they thought that it was real, that it was a snuff film, that it actually killed off the actors in the movie. So it went to trial, and Ruggero, he brought the actors to the court, and that was probably the shortest lawsuit ever. He won in Ruggero's favor. Of course, they just walked out of there laughing, probably. But the movie Cannibal Holocaust is far from a laughing matter. It's a very nasty jungle cannibal Italian horror movie. Only for the strongest of stomach, that one. Yes, you either love it or hate it. I happen to love it. It's a great horror movie that takes things way too far, and the shock value holds up even now. So that's my number 2 for 1980, The Great Cannibal Holocaust, the best cannibal flick ever. My number 1, however, for 1980 is what's arguably maybe the best horror movie of all time, starring Jack Nicholson going bananas as the crazy Jack Torrance in Stephen King's The Shining. Stephen King himself hated this movie, but in my opinion, the movie that master director Stanley Kubrick, rest in power, did is way, way better than the book. I didn't really think the book was creepy at all. It was slightly entertaining, but nah, man, Stanley took that and made it a masterpiece, really. So 1980s, The Shining, that's my number 1 for that year. 1981, and it's a top 10 there too, man. The 80s were so great for horror movies and music and everything else, computer games. Best decade to grow up. I'm so happy I grew up then. But anyway, my top 10 horror movies by year in this podcast right here, in this video for 1981. Number 10 is the slasher Madman, a low budget one, but a real fun one. A fun fact there is the actor that played the Madman, he was dressed up as a monster with a mask and makeup and everything. His wife was having a baby, and he had to go to the hospital with the full costume and the full makeup, because she was giving birth so fast, that he had to leave the set in a hurry, and showed up on at the hospital in the monster suit. I hope it didn't scare his kid to death like right after he was born. But anyway, my number 10 for 1991 is Madman. Back to the jungle with more cannibal butchery for number 9 there, and back to Italy. Umberto Lenzi's Cannibal Ferox, also starring the great Giovanni Lombardo Radice, aka Johnny Morgan, as the way too much coke snorting, making him really violent out in the jungle and doing silly things against the natives, ending up not so great for him in Cannibal Ferox. Another one that you really gotta have a strong stomach to be able to take, like Cannibal Holocaust. It's not as good as that one, but it's possibly even more gory and vile and gruesome and horrible. So my number 9 for 1981 is Cannibal Ferox. Bringing on to a couple of werewolf movies here. My number 8 for 81 is Joe Dante's classic werewolf movie The Howling, and my number 7 is John Landis' classic werewolf movie An American Werewolf in London. Number 6, another master director from Canada, of course named David Cronenberg, and he comes with Scanners. Imagine if you can make people's heads explode just by thinking about it. Well, that's what this movie is about in a way. A group of people named Scanners. Pretty creepy stuff there. My top 5 for 1981 at number 5 is Friday the 13th Part 2. This one is growing and growing on me. I think this is probably the most hardcore of the Friday the 13th movies, and this is the one that introduces Jason as the killer as well. Keep It Slasher at number 4, definitely one of my all-time favorite slashers there. The Burning, with the incredible soundtrack by Rick Wakeman. Brings back fond memories of myself at summer camp back in the day, in like 8th grade and stuff like that. Same type of fun these kids in the movie are having. We used to have it in summer camp back then, except of course there's a maniac killer in this movie, The Burning, and he wreaks havoc at summer camp. So one of the most fun and also one of the most gory and violent slashers there, from Tony Malum and Rick Wakeman, genius soundtrack for The Burning. Of course, I've sampled it to death. Others have sampled it as well. You can always flip it if you want, but the whole thing's been used by now. Anyway, top 3 for 1981. Number 3 is the follow-up to Halloween, which is really a continuation of just, picking up where Halloween 1 left off. It's making it one movie. I think I did a mixed version of Halloween 1 and 2 as well, where you can't really see the clips. I usually watch it like one long 3-hour long movie. But anyway, Halloween 2 at number 3. Not as great as the first Halloween, but a damn good follow-up, I would say. My number 2 is Lucio Fulci's best film, so bringing it back to Italy there, part ghost movie, part satanic occult movie, and part zombie flick, also really violent and gory, is The Beyond, directed by Lucio Fulci. My favorite horror movie of 1981, however, is Sam Raimi's classic The Evil Dead, which you could say is also like a zombie curse movie, I guess, but also like a fun, way over the top dark comedy as well as a horror movie there. Evil Dead, definitely one of the biggest classics of all time. They're my number 1 of 81. 1982, also got a top 10 there, man. Horror in the early 80s. Oh yeah, as great as everything else in the early 80s. So number 10 here is the monster movie The Beast Within, released by Warner Brothers, and really, really gory and violent and stuff to be released by a major studio, I would say, and a good one at that. A great monster movie called The Beast Within. Number 9 is Halloween 3, of course, Season of the Witch. This is way different from the first 2 Halloweens, as Michael Myers doesn't appear in it, making some people love it and some people hate it, but I like it, man. I really like it. It's not as good as the first 2, but it's a good horror movie in its own right that perhaps would have been better off called something else than Halloween 3. Maybe just cut that out and call it Season of the Witch. But anyway, John Carpenter intended every Halloween movie to be a different story, so he never intended Michael Myers to return at all. But of course, as popular as the first Halloween got, Michael of course had to return. So my number 8 is the remake of Cat People, starring Malcolm McDowell and Nastassja Kinski. It's a good one. That was really, really huge back in the day when it was released, and it's kind of gotten slept on more in recent times, but I think it's starting to come back out there. I think they released a Blu-ray, perhaps even a 4K lately, of Cat People. Definitely a Blu-ray anyway, so seek that one out. It's got a great soundtrack by Giorgio Moroder as well. Number 7 is called The Slayer. What should I call this? It's not really a ghost movie, kind of a monster movie in a way, but a really creepy one. Nightmarish monster movie, you could call it, called The Slayer. Not one of the most common ones. It was also a video nasty, but it really isn't that violent or nasty or anything. It's just, I guess a couple of scenes that made it become a video nasty. Number 6 is the classic underrated slasher at a hospital called Visiting Hours. This one got a real nasty villain, man. It's man, he just stalks this nurse like forever in a hospital and stuff. It's a great slasher. Top 5. Number 5, one of the most vile and most violent video nasties from Lucio Fulci, possibly his most gory and violent film as well, called The New York Ripper. It's like a murder mystery giallo and a horror movie at the same time as a video nasty. Come prepared to that one, that's all I'm saying. New York Ripper anyway, my number 5 from 1982. Number 4 from 1982 is the ghost flick Poltergeist from Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper. Yeah, man, classic ghost movie. Number 3, bringing it back to Italy with Dario Argento's Tenebrae. That's his own favorite movie, and it's probably the best one to introduce people to Dario Argento and possibly Italian horror at all, because it's got more of an American feel to it, but with an Italian twist. I mean, Italian movies are just different from what we're used to from American movies. So yeah, classic giallo, that one. Great murder mystery, really hard to figure out who done it until the very end. Dario Argento's Tenebrae at number 3. Number 2, John Carpenter's masterpiece, arguably better than Halloween, at least to a lot of people, not to me. Halloween is my favorite John Carpenter, but The Thing is really close. It's of course a remake of the old school The Thing, and it's the best out of all the Thing movies. I think he really went all the way with this one. It's technically probably Carpenter's best movie when it comes to the effects and stuff like that. Great monster effects, and the crazy Norwegian in the beginning, you can really hear he can only speak like halfway Norwegian. If you're Norwegian, it's funny to hear that guy talk Norwegian, because it's broken Norwegian, you could say. Anyway, it's a fun movie, man, a great one, and also with a whodunit mystery type element to it, as they're trying to figure out who the Thing is. The Thing being, of course, a shape-shifting alien that can clone people and morph into any living thing, you know. So creepy sci-fi based horror movie there, The Thing from John Carpenter, my number 2 for 1982. So what's my favorite from this epic horror year 1982? My number 1 horror movie for 1982 is the anthology Creepshow. 1983, I also got a top 10 for that year. Number 10 is the monster movie Deadly Spawn. Just a classic monster movie, that one. Number 9 is the House of Long Shadows, which is more of a classic style old school horror movie, but made in the 80s, starring Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing and Vincent Price and stuff like that. There are a lot of great actors. Number 8 is Cujo, the Stephen King flick about the killer rabbit dog, of course. Number 7, Sleepaway Camp, a slasher that's as a movie not really that great, but the ending just blow all endings away. It's the ending to end all endings, you could say. So that's my number 7 there for 83, Sleepaway Camp. The ending will shock you to tears, no question. Number 6 is the follow-up to 1960's Psycho, which would have been my number 1 for 1962, Alfred Hitchcock's great The Psycho. And this is Psycho 2. I think maybe the first horror movie I actually saw in a theater, with a lot of screaming girls around and everything. It was a lot of fun. So a friend of mine just pull out a knife and stuff just to scare the girls. So there's a lot of screaming going on. But anyway, Norman Bates back home in Psycho 2. More John Carpenter fun, literally, in Christine, about the killer car. That is my number 5 for 1983. Number 4, Italy, about the Italian horror movie composer who gets a visit from a knife-wielding maniac in A Blade in the Dark from Lamberto Bava, who is of course Mario Bava's son. A great Italian classic, that one. Number 3 for that year for me, 1983, is Twilight Zone, the movie. John Lithgow, and he's really scared of flying, and of course a monster turns up when he has to fly. So he sees this thing out on the wing, and when he realizes what it is, he's already afraid of flying, but then he gets really afraid of flying. You want to see something really scary, as the tagline is in that movie from Dan Aykroyd, Twilight Zone, the movie. Based on the TV series, and really great as well. Number 2, David Cronenberg's Dead Zone, starring Christopher Walken, and he's a psychic, and he sees all these murders and stuff like that, helps the police out with that, and then, during the movie, he sees a future president who will push the button and start World Nuclear War 3. Martin Sheen, starring as the president, of course, so Christopher Walken's character got a real dilemma. Is he going to try and stop that future president so that he doesn't destroy the planet? Great Stephen King novel, great David Cronenberg movie, and my number 2 for 1983 is Dead Zone. My number one for 983 is also a David Cronenberg movie, so he did great that year with the movie Videodrome, which is my favorite movie of 983. Probably the horror movie that predicts the future better than any other movie, as there is some, early philosophies about the internet and how dependent people are on their computers and stuff like that in the future. I'll leave the rest up to your imagination, and just grab Videodrome and watch it if you haven't. It's a great one, and my number one for 983, Videodrome. Top 10 for 984 as well there, with the monster movie Chud, about this monster that lives in the sewers, and of course, you know, he comes up at night into the streets and kill people and drags them into the sewer with him and eats them. So that's my number 10 for 984. My number 9, going to Australia. Not too many great Australian horror movies, but there's a handful, and this is one of them. Bit of a zombie movie, this one, called Death Warmed Up. Number 8 is Dreamscape, about this president also who sees some nasty, terrifying images of what will happen to the world in the future. I'm not going to spoil it further, but it's a great one that's recently been released on Blu-ray as well, called Dreamscape. Number 7 is the Drew Barrymore starring Stephen King written Firestarter, about this girl who can start fires by simply thinking about it. Number 6 is also a Stephen King adaptation of Children of the Corn. Number 5 is Combat Shock, about this dude who's just really way out there, and his girlfriend is way out there, and his baby is fucked up, and everything around him is messed up. He lives in the hood, in the ghetto, and everything's just messed up. It's a really depressing movie, but if you're in the mood for that, then Combat Shock might just be the one. My number 4 is the funny comedy horror, The Toxic Avenger. Of course, this guy, this nerd type guy, he gets chased by a gang of bullies and falls into like this bucket of toxic waste, and becomes the superhero, the Toxic Avenger. Sounds like fun to you? Yes, it is. Violent fun, however. That's my number 4 for 84, The Toxic Avenger. Go Toxie. Number 3 is Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. I guess most people's favorite Friday movie, though Part 2 is closing in on it for me the more I see it, because that's more hardcore horror movie, which I'm into. This is a lot more comedy as well. Oh man, the dance, that's what makes my day, man. If you're in a bad mood, just see that movie. You know what I'm talking about, man. Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. By this time, Jason is in full effect with the hockey mask and everything. Number 2 for 984 for me is Gremlins. Kind of a cozy Christmas themed horror movie with this cute little gremlins that turns into monsters. If you put water on them and stuff like that, and if they eat after midnight, I think then they become monsters and stuff. And yeah, man, I've seen it hundreds of times, man, especially around Christmas time. It's a classic, Gremlins. I'm gonna watch it again soon because it's been a while now. But that's my number 2 for 984 anyway, Gremlins. My number 1 for 984, however, is A Nightmare on Elm Street. You know, Robert Englund, enter Freddy Krueger, child killer. He is real nasty in the early movies, man, before they made a joke out of him later in the sequels and the TV series, like Drew Barrymore said in Scream. Yeah, the first one was great, but the rest one sucked. I don't know if all of them sucked. They were okay, but the first one, the best by far. Introducing Johnny Depp as a young actor as well. It's just a lot of fun, man. Don't go to sleep, because Freddy Krueger will turn up in your dreams and kill your ass. So my favorite horror movie of 1984 is A Nightmare on Elm Street. Keeping it top 10 for 985. Number 10 is kind of a feminist horror movie, I would say, called Tenement, directed by Robert Finlay. It's more of a hood action type horror movie as well. It's not so much horror, really, more of an action type movie. That's gotten his horror stamp because there's a lot of violence and stuff in it. So that's my number 10 for 985. My number 9 is the Stephen King adaptation werewolf movie called Silver Bullet. Not one of the best werewolf movies, but a decent, pretty good one. Number 8, the horror comedy called House. Also a lot of fun, one of the best horror comedies, that one. My number 7 is Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. Back to Italy again for number 6, and Dario Argento's Phenomena. Not one of his very best, but it stars the beautiful Jennifer Connelly, and it's got supernatural elements and psycho killer elements in it, and it's a solid Argento movie, though not one of his best. Phenomena. Number 5 is the final movie in the Dead trilogy, consisting of 1968's Night of the Living Dead, 1978's Dawn of the Dead, and now 1985's Day of the Dead, directed by George A. Romero. This is actually a lot of people's favorite movie in the Dead trilogy. I think it's the weakest one, but it's not weak by any means. It's still a really great zombie movie, Day of the Dead. My number 4 is another zombie movie that's steady rising up my horror charts. So number 4 for 985 is Return of the Living Dead. Gory zombie comedy fun. That's all I can say about it. It's real fun, man. It's a lot of fun. Number 3, I wouldn't say zombies, but number 3, keeping it demons anyway there with the movie Demons from Mario Bava's son, Lamberto Bava. Another great Italian horror movie classic, that one, where they're in the movie theater and these people gets contaminated by something and they turn into demons. My number 2 for 985 is the vampire movie. That's also a lot of fun. Brewster, Fright Night. That's my number 2 movie for 1985. The guy who plays Evil Ed, his real name also escapes me. I'm not really great with names like that, but he turned into, he started doing gay porn when he was an adult. So in this one, he was like a kid, and it's just a really fun character and kind of annoying as well. But his voice, I'm sure there's a million people doing impersonations of him. It's like Chet from Weird Science, it's a really epic character, Evil Ed. So Brewster, number 2, Fright Night for 985. My favorite movie of 985 is Stuart Gordon and Brian Usna's great Reanimator about Herbert West. It's the crazy scientist doctor who comes up with this liquid green serum that will turn dead people alive. Of course, there's a hatch to that. There's a flip side of the coin, and that is that the dead turned alive become violent. Yes, a great classic from 995 there. My favorite horror movie of 995. Number 1 is Reanimator. Top 10 for 996 too. Number 10 is Night of the Creeps. Just a really fun horror movie. That's all I got to say about it. My number 9 is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. I've actually never been a huge fan of it, though Michael Rooker, of course, does a great job as Henry, the serial killer, and it's really realistic, or it's said to be realistic, But to me, it's always been good, but I don't, all these rave reviews about it, I don't really love it, but I like it. Number 8, the fun monster movie The Critters. Little furry balls turning killer coming to get your ass. Number 7 is Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. Man, the vicar, the priest, he is just so damn creepy, man, when he goes like, "You're all gonna die!" Poltergeist 2, man, The Other Side. My number 7 for 86. My number 6 for 86 is the Italian giallo You'll Die at Midnight. It's not a big budget movie. There's it's definitely flawed, but it's still a lot of fun. You'll Die at Midnight. My number 5 for 986 is Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, and he still does. My number 4 is the follow-up to Demons, so more Italian Lamberto Bava Demon Madness there for Demons 2. Number 3, David Cronenberg directed The Fly. We're talking about Brundlefly, actually a remake from back in the days, but he did his own spin on it, and this is probably the all-time best version of The Fly. Of course, Seth Brundle, he's the scientist. He makes a teleporter. He actually makes 2 teleporters, and he manages to teleport monkeys from one spot to another via teleporter. So pretty groundbreaking science there, and he decides to rush it and enter the teleporter himself to see if he can transport himself to the other teleporter. And it seems a success. He manages to do that. Only problem is that a fly came into the teleporter when he teleported himself. So, what do you think will happen from that if you haven't seen it? Well, if you haven't, see it. It's disgusting though, but it's great. David Cronenberg's The Fly at number 3 for 986 to me. My 986 number 2 is the lot of fun, I wouldn't say slasher, but kind of slasher, kind of whodunit movie, April Fool's Day. It's just too much fun, man. You can watch this anytime. It's really, really a lot of fun. My favorite from 86, however, is the Stuart Gordon Brian Houston movie called From Beyond. So, they had the 1985 number 1 with Reanimator, Stuart Gordon and Brian Houston's best years. This also in 1986. Then my favorite horror movie that year is From Beyond. It's also, I guess you could say, science related. This guy makes up this machine from hell, and it all goes terribly wrong from there, opening up to different dimensions and stuff like that. So my number 1 for 86, From Beyond. Top 10 also for 987, the anthology From a Whisper to a Scream, starring Vincent Price at number 10, a great anthology. The low-budget gore epic at number 9 called Street Trash, just a lot of fun and gore there in Street Trash. Number 8, about the maniac stepfather in The Stepfather. Number 7, about people who are a lot more maniac than the stepfather. It's the German Jörg Buttgereit movie Necromantic, about necrophilia. Number 6 is the follow-up to Creepshow 2. It's not nearly as great as the first one to me. It doesn't even come close, but it's still a lot of fun, Creepshow 2. Number 5, to Italy we go, with a bit of a slasher there. A guy in an owl mask runs rampant in the theater, killing the actors and stage managers and workers and stuff like that in stage fright. Real great, stylish Italian giallo whodunit horror movie. That one at number 5 for 87 to me. Number 4 is the classic Hellraiser, the first one. I liked it back in the days. Then I just like it more and more the more I see it. So this might rise up on my charts there. But for now, number 4 for 987, Clive Barker's Hellraiser, that was originally to be titled Sadomasochists from Beyond the Grave. I'm sure the company and pretty much everyone around Clive Barker got him to dead that title really fast. So Hellraiser it became. Enter the Cenobites. Number 3, one of the most over-the-top zombie gore horror comedies from Peter Jackson, who ended up like a real mainstream director, of course, doing King Kong and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and all that stuff. And but this was his first movie that's like a homemade movie back in New Zealand, so it shows that anyone from anywhere in the world can. If you make your home movies and do it right and do it well, then you can rise to Hollywood stardom if you want to go down that path or up or however you see it. But anyway, Peter Jackson's Bad Taste at number 3 for 987 to me. I'm still dying of laughter every time that sheep blows up, man. It's just way out of left field. Back to Italy, and another great Dario Argento directed classic in the USA called Terror at the Opera, but the original Italian title was Opera, and that's the longest version as well there. My number 2 for 987 is Opera. The return of Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi and co. for my number 1 987 film, it's Evil Dead 2. Really a remake of Evil Dead 1. I would say. Not as hardcore horror, so I still prefer Evil Dead 1, but Evil Dead 2 is technically better and stuff like that. So a lot of fun, man. Evil Dead 2, my number 1 for 987. Top 10 also for 1988 is the remake of The Blob, like a blob monster movie. That's all I can say about that one at number 10. Number 9 for me is Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and that's exactly what it is. Number 8, another Cronenberg classic called Dead Ringers, where Jeremy Irons plays these twin brothers. He stars as both of them, and they're this real smart doctor type dudes, and but it all starts to go wrong from there, and it gets worse and worse for our twin friends in Dead Ringers. Moving on to an Asian horror movie, quite gory and quite inspired by Dario Argento, called Evil Dead Trap. That's my number 7. My number 6 is the Dutch giallo called Amsterdam, the really great giallo that happens in Amsterdam in the canals. This a guy in a diving outfit, he rises up from the canals and kills people and pulls them down into the canals with him and disappears to show up somewhere else in the city and doing the same thing again. Great giallo movie, that one. Great mystery flick. Amsterdam, my 1988 number 6. Moving on to number 5, it is more of a, I would say, a gang type action flick, but with a lot of gore and violence in it, kind of like a version of The Warriors for grown-ups, and it's Deadbeat at Dawn at number 5, directed by Jim Monbeber. Really hardcore street movie, that one. Love it, Deadbeat at Dawn. My number 4 is the fun Night of the Demons. Man, I love the intro with the graphics in the intro. It's so 80s, you just gotta love it. And it's basically a monster movie, Night of the Demons. Top fun for Halloween and stuff like that at my number 4 for 1988. The follow-up to Phantasm, Phantasm 2, directed by Don Coscarelli at number 3 for 88. The follow-up to Hellraiser, Hellbound Hellraiser 2, is my number 2 for 1988, and that is also my favorite Hellraiser movie, though the first one, the original Hellraiser, is really close, but this one is a little more gory and nasty and stuff like that, so I like this one better. However, my number 1 for 1988 is Enter Chucky, the Killer Doll, in Child's Play. So that would be my number 1 for 1988. Chucky wants to play in Child's Play. Finally, here in this year-by-year favorite horror movies of mine, I'm the White Shadow Norway on the mic for you. I'm starting to get a little bit tired. I am about 1 hour in, so yeah, that's a good length for this kind of video, I think. I hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, first up, my top 10 for 1989. Number 10 is the follow-up to Stepfather, Stepfather 2. Number 9, Society, which all in all isn't that great of a movie, but the ending kills most endings like Sleepaway Camp did, but in a different way. God knows how much latex they used for the effects for that ending, man. It's just crazy gory, the ending to Society. Though the rest isn't all that, or the movie isn't all that much to write home about, really. Way low budget zombie flick at number 8 is Redneck Zombies. It's a lot of fun if you can take your movies really low budget and really, really gory. Another low budget horror movie, zombie movie at number 7, from the people around the Sam Raimi. He was involved in this one as well, called The Dead Next Door. My number 6 is the Robert Englund starring as the Phantom of the Opera in the movie of the same name. That's a remake of the old school Phantom of the Opera as well. Not as great as that one, but this is a movie I used to watch a lot back in the late 80s, early 90s, the Phantom of the Opera. So it's my number 6 for 89. Back to Italy there with Michele Soavi, who also directed Stage Fright that I talked about earlier. In The Church, yeah, I like Stage Fright a lot better, but The Church is okay, man. It's kind of a slow burn too, but it's a good flick to kick back and relax to on a late night, you know. And it's occult themed and stuff like that. My number 4 for 1989 is Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. A lot of people hate on this one. I don't really see why. I don't think it's any worse than Halloween 4 or 6, or at least, you know. It's good Halloween fun with Michael Myers there, number 4. The follow-up to The Toxic Avenger number 2, is my number 3 movie for 89. Another one that I used to watch a lot in the late 80s, early 90s. That's a lot of fun, especially when when Toxie just goes on a rampage and he just makes this kind of like a football out of this guy, and it is just way over the top hilarious fun, man. From trauma movies to Toxic Avenger, probably my favorite Toxic movie there, the Toxic Avenger #2. Back to some Sam Raimi territory there with one of his buddies named Scott Spiegel, who directed Intruder, about this maniac killer at a mall that's shut down, and this killer is running around killing them off one by one. Good slasher fun there in Intruder, my number 2 for $9.99. And to finish the 80s and this video, my number 1 for $9.99. That I was also lucky enough to watch in a theater on the big screen when it was brand new, is Mary Lambert's Pet Sematary, based on the novel by Stephen King, the book also being great, and the movie, the original Pet Sematary. The remakes are meh, you know what I'm saying, it's okay. But the original Pet Sematary is the one to watch. Super creepy, horror fun, and my favorite movie of 1989. I'm the White Shadow Norway. I hope you enjoyed this horror themed podcast for Halloween month. It's October. I hope you watch a lot of horror movies, and I hope you decorate the house with a lot of horror themed stuff, and that you eat a lot of candy and stuff like that, and just kick back and relax and enjoy and watch horror movies. I'm the White Shadow Norway. I'll be back with more videos later. Hope you enjoyed this one. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.